right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time today to attend our dialogue on diversity. As you know, we've invited the leaders of the SCBA, the South County Division, the Young Lawyers Division, and the Council for Diversity and Inclusion to attend. We've also extended the invitation to the judiciary, and several members are in attendance or will be joining us as they can. So thank you, everyone, for attending. This is an extremely important event and an overdue event. And so we appreciate you taking the time to be here today. I'm super excited to have Vicki Clark here. I, along with several board members, have had the opportunity to speak at length with Ms. Clark and to attend some of her prior presentations. Before we logged on today, she said not to bore you with her bio, that not to go through it. And I know I sent it out, but I do want to just say a little bit about Ms. Clark and her background. For nearly 2 decades, Vicki has helped build the capacity, she calls building the capacity of organizations, and for nonprofit, government, faith-based, and business sector organizations through training, speaking, writing, and consulting. She's based in Memphis, Tennessee, and she's got experience as a speaker, trainer, facilitator, mentor, and consultant. She's worked with a huge number of organizations, from banks to accounting firms to the American Bar Association to Junior League, and she'll tell you this is not her first rodeo. I think she said that a couple times as when I've been dealing with her. But each year she speaks to thousands of business and community leaders, and she's made presentations in 49 of the 50 states and internationally in England, Russia, Canada, and Venezuela. And so thanks to Zoom, she is here with us today. So I'm going to turn it over to Vicki. If you have questions during the course of this, go ahead and put them in chat, and we'll go ahead and try to get through them once we're through with the program. So with that, I'll turn it over to Vicki Clark.
Oh, thank you, Jennifer, and thanks to all of you for joining us today and for being willing to go into this conversation about diversity. We're going to do the survey course over here and kind of handle talk about lots of things. And this is a very important conversation. And again, thank you all for being willing to have it. I am saying hello from Memphis, Tennessee. I'm sorry I can't be there with you, but have spent lots of time in Florida and looking forward to hopefully one day coming back and being able to be with you in person. So let's get started. This idea is, I always want you to think about how the mission of your organization can be moved forward if individually and collectively you all become more culturally competent. We are all on this journey. I was a teenager here in Memphis, in this house. I live in the house I grew up in 1968, during the heavy parts of the civil rights movement, when Dr. King was killed 15 minutes from here. I don't have the corner on this. I'm learning something every day. I'm learning something personally. I'm learning more about organizations, but I do want you to say, what is it about diversity, equity, inclusion, and access, and all of that will help us to move this mission forward? Because it's all about the mission of the organization, the journey that you all are on. And then for you individually in your firms, in your associations, at the judiciary level, why is this important? You would not be in this work. You would not be in the legal profession if you did not want to create a more just and caring world. I don't think there'd be anybody in the legal profession who says, I'm not interested in a just and caring world. And so that is why these conversations are important, because they help us all to, from wherever we sit, to create a more just and caring world. So let's keep going. Got somebody helping with the slides, and that's great. I just found this quote the other day, that it's not your responsibility, none of our responsibility, to finish the work of perfecting the world, but you're not free to desist from it either. So what this says to me is we can't go silent. I never thought that we would be at this place at this time. First of all, I never thought I'd get to be this old. But second of all, I thought that when the laws changed, after the civil rights movement and the women's rights movement in the early 70s, that all this was going to be taken care of, that once people could see each other, be close to each other, interact with each other. I never in my life thought that 50 years later, this would be what we would need to be talking about. And I think we all got quiet. I think we got quiet. I think we stopped moving. And when I say that, I'm not talking about people of color. I'm talking about people of conscience. And things did open up and things did change and laws did change and things got better. But I think the one thing about a movement is it has to keep moving. And so, you know, as Jennifer said, I keep talking about this is not my first time at this rodeo. I want it to be my last time at this rodeo, not because of my age, but what I want is for us to get it right this time and realize that these conversations have to continue and they have to be constantly a part of who we are personally, as well as organizationally, as well as professionally. So let's keep going. I have the opportunity to meet with some of the members of your Council for Diversity and Inclusion, and I really want to pay tribute to your bar for setting up this council. You all are already positioned very well, and you've been doing this work. This is not new for you. There are many organizations who, after Mr. George Floyd died, they had to start from scratch. You all have been doing this work, and so I just wanted to just remind you and really to salute you and to thank the council for the work that they're doing, because this bar is positioned to just continue to move forward in this work, because you've already got a structure set up and you've already been working hard to promote diversity and inclusion in the Sarasota legal community. And I love the way you say outreach, education, and collaboration. And today is more about an education conversation. So we just wanted to, and I am aware that I'm not going to read their roles and responsibilities, and but just, you know what they are, but I just thought they were really important to put them up here so that everybody understands the role of the council. And I think someone from the council is going to speak toward the end of the session. So we'll just keep moving. Thank you. So when we talk about leaders in the nonprofit sector, I'm talking about your association now, but also leaders in the corporate sector in your work, and leaders in the government sector. Who, if it's not you to tackle this issue, who is it? Who's going to do it? I think in the 60s and the 70s, we had these iconic figures in this work. We had Martin Luther King, we had Malcolm X, we had Shirley Chisholm, we had Bella Abzug, we had you know, Cesar Chavez, we had Harvey Milk, we had all of these iconic people. I don't think we're gonna have those people in this round of the rodeo. You know who it is? It's us. It's us individually doing what we can, where we can, to tackle this complex and pressing issue, which is bias and racism and lack of access. And I think maybe that's what happened, is that we were waiting for who's going to be the next iconic figure, or who should we look to? I think we look to ourselves. And that's why it's important for all of us to go on a learning journey around this. And we definitely know, if we didn't know before 8 months ago, we know that it's definitely time for action. So let's keep moving. Some of you have read some of the work of Peter Drucker, and Dr. Drucker's work guides my life, really, and my work. I had the opportunity to be on his training team after he started the Peter Drucker Foundation. And he gives you 5 questions to ask your organization or your workplace. And the first question is, what is the mission? And we kind of looked at the mission of your organization. What journey are you on? His second question is, who are your customers? And you say, we don't talk about customers, we talk about clients, or we talk about, you know, members, depending on where you are. But he talks about the primary customer being the person or the people whose lives most transformed by the organization or the company's mission. Because you're in the transformation work. You know, this whole just and caring society, you're in the transformation work. And to understand what role diversity, equity, inclusion, and access play in making sure that the transformation of your primary customers moves forward. And then everybody else are your supporting customers, which would include other law firms and which would include the association and all of that. So the idea of what is the value, because that's his third question, is what does the customer value? And obviously in the legal profession and in the legal system, people value equity, justice, inclusion, and lack of bias. So we've got the first question is what's the mission? Second question is who's the customer, looking at primary and supporting customers. Third question is what is the customer value? His fourth question is what are our results? And he talks about results more as outcomes, change lives and change conditions. And how could continuing your own journey through these conversations about racism and diversity and inclusion, how could it add value to those whose lives you are helping to transform, and also to your own lives and to your own work? So his fourth question is, what are our outcomes? Change lives and change conditions. How would the conditions change within this bar association? How will the conditions change within your firm, your office? And then his last question is, what's the plan? And part of the plan is actually getting to learn more about diversity, equity, inclusion, and access, privilege, and all these conversations that are going on. So, you know, we got to do some hard work. We got to change some things. And we know that. And we know it's not going to be a quick fix. And it is not going to be a knee-jerk reaction. And hopefully we can start moving to more proactive work than reactive work. So let's go on. When we look at the benefits, you know, your council has been working to try to get more diverse folks into the legal community in Sarasota County. In fact, from what I was told the other day, that was kind of the original concept or charge to the council. And you know that the more diverse the team is, the more diverse the pool is, it's going to be open to more innovation and to new ideas. You know that. Groupthink just does not work if we all think alike. So you want to expand the talent pool because you're trying to make the legal community in Sarasota County much more diverse, not just diverse for diversity's sake, but because it's going to bring innovation, new ideas, and really a better and a different way of working. Let's go to the next one. Go on. Other benefits is that we need to be more culturally fluent, all of us, which makes you able to lead, for this organization to be a leadership organization, or to make your firm to be more leadership. And leadership just means that it's not all about org chart. It really isn't. It really means that if you are a leader, you influence somebody's life in a positive way. And each one of you do that through your work. So a diverse membership for this bar association makes you more relevant. And that's where the cultural competence comes in. Let's keep going. Also, this idea of having a seat at the table. I mean, you're spread out through Sarasota County, but you want to make sure that this association and the members of this association are a trusted voice in the conversation around legal issues and around things going on in Sarasota County. And that's where this growth in cultural competency and fluency is going to benefit you all as an association, but also individually and in your own professions. So we'll keep going. Well, you know, we can't change what we refuse to confront. I'm going to acknowledge to you that, again, I think I got real comfortable too. Got very comfortable in the 70s and the 80s, because the world opened up and people like me could do things that we couldn't do before, and women could do things, and people of color could do things, and we were able to get jobs and things that had previously, and professions that had not been open to us. And so we got kind of comfortable. Everybody got comfortable. But I think we have to confront that we got issues now as a society. And we confront it, and we don't confront it with a blame game. We just say we confront it, and then we look at how we change it. So let's keep going. So we're going to create awareness today about a lot of things. We're going to hit a lot of things. This is probably way too heavy of a deck, but we're just going to move through it. And yes, you will be able to have this deck because you all have nothing else to do but read all these slides. So let's keep going. This idea of a tapestry, I remember the melting pot days, and anybody who's probably over 45 remembers the melting pot days, where it was like, we're not going to see color, we're not going to see differences. And I really believe that's the way I raised my oldest son, because, you know, but we know now that when we pretend that we don't see people for who they are, they can't be authentically them. And this idea of the melting pot is when you melt everybody down, all you got is a glob. And so what we really want to do, and I love the way Maya Angelou talked about this as a tapestry, that society is a tapestry. And all the threads and all the cloths, they may look different, but we actually see their color, we see their fabric. You know, my threads are probably older, blacker, have curlier hair, and have a Southern accent. So my thread and is left-handed. So my thread looks a lot different than some of your threads. But if you start, and that's okay. That's what we've learned. That's how we move from this melting pot of I don't see color to I want you to see me for who I am. And I want to see you for who you are. And it's okay for me to be who I am. And it's okay for you to be who you are. But then when we start pulling these threads out, because we feel like that some of these threads don't belong or they don't fit in, that's when the whole tapestry starts to come apart. That's when the whole society starts to come apart. So I wanted to talk about that because a lot of us really went through and accepted and adopted and still say, you know, I don't see color. I don't see ethnicity. You know, I don't see that. Well, when we know better, we do better. So this idea of thinking of society more as a tapestry, thinking of your profession more as a tapestry. You have all different types of people in the legal profession who do different types of work and all that. You don't try to say that the litigators have more value than the tax people and all. I don't think you do. But the idea that just as the legal profession is a tapestry made up of different types of focus areas and things like that, so does society. So we'll keep moving. This is kind of a hard slide to see, but you know a lot about oppression in the legal system. You know a lot about what's going on. You know more than I do about. But when you look at the concept of privilege, domination, and oppression, if you look at the top, and privilege, we're going to talk about privilege. Privilege does not mean you have more money. It doesn't mean you didn't have to walk to school in the snow. You guys live in Florida, so you didn't have to walk to school in the snow or things like that. But the idea is that systems were designed by and for everybody at the top. So the systems were designed by and for folks who have those at the top. If you look at up under the axis, it was not designed by or for us. And it's interesting, some of what they mention here when we talk about females. I remember I have met the first woman who was in the state capitol who was elected to office in Missouri. And when she went to Jefferson City on her first day, there was no women's bathroom on the floor where the House of Representatives, the State House met. The women's bathroom was in the basement because I guess they never thought when they built the capital of Missouri in Jefferson City that there would ever be a woman in the House of Representatives. And so she demanded that they build a ladies' washroom. But whoever designed it never thought that there would be a woman in there. So when we look at, you know, and we look at what we think of our ideas of a family, you know, if I think that all families look like mine and your family doesn't, and I'm designing the system, then your family doesn't fit in. And then when we look at dark, you say, well, what does dark mean? In every ethnicity, the darker people of the ethnicity are often oppressed by those within the ethnicity. My parents were both much darker than I am. And I kept waiting to get dark because I wanted to be this wonderful chocolate person like my mom and my dad, and it never happened. But they helped me to understand colorism within my own race and the role that colorism plays within every race and every ethnicity. And obviously English as a second language. And then this interesting thing about people who are unattractive. What does that mean? You know, I'm told that at this point in time, Marilyn Monroe would be considered, at one point in time, she would be considered a plus size woman because in the 50s, attractive was considered voluptuous. And then in the 60s, some people went through the Twiggy era Some of you may remember who Twiggy was. She was that British model who was really straight up and down. I never went through the Twiggy era. I watched other people go through the Twiggy era. We also think of attractive as tall, even though most people in America are not that tall. And then this whole idea of old. America is a very youth-oriented country. We don't do as much as we might to value people as they age. This is one that's becoming very, very real for me. And then all these other person with disabilities, LGBTQ plus, people of color, gender deviant people, and believe it or not, there's something called intersectionality, and I represent intersectionality because I'm a woman, I'm a Black woman, and yes, I'm an older woman. And so when you add all of these together, most of the systems were not designed for people who have either individually under this or even let alone the intersectionality of it. So this is just, and when we're talking about oppression, again, we're talking about systems. We're not talking about personal, we're talking about systems. So let's go to the next one. Let's move on. It is really time to unlearn. Learning journeys, you said, well, wait a minute, I thought we were gonna learn, but there are a lot of things we have to unlearn that before we can learn, if we're gonna go into true transformation. So I wonder if you would think, this would be a question for you to put, in your offices or even for the association. Maybe this is a question that the council might want to put to all of you at some point, is what do we need to unlearn in order to move forward in diversity, equity, inclusion, access, and anti-racism? What is it that we have to unlearn? And we've had to unlearn a lot of things during COVID. We've had to unlearn that we don't have to meet in person. We've had to unlearn that we don't have to meet at certain times. So what is it, if we're really going to have true transformation, again, personally, professionally, organizationally, what is it that we have to unlearn? So the idea to solve a problem, you got to recognize your share of responsibility rather than blaming others. And I have heard people say, oh my gosh, if we didn't, I'm sure that someone said in Missouri, if we had never elected that woman, we wouldn't have to build that bathroom on this floor. Or we keep having to change things for people rather than what is our share of the responsibility, not personally. So most of us didn't design any of the system, but we cannot blame those who have been oppressed or those who have been marginalized or those who have never had an opportunity to design the system and who've been trying really hard to fit into the systems that were designed by others without them in mind. And I'm going to take the high road and say not on purpose, but because you just didn't understand or know who we were. So what is it that you have to unlearn? There's some things we have to unlearn personally, professionally, and then organizationally. Let's keep going. It would be interesting for, again, if we were going to do this for a whole day and we could be together, I'd actually have you talk about what the culture of the association is. What is the culture? This is not what's written. What is it? How does work get done on a day-to-day basis? What are the behaviors of the individuals and the groups? Because the culture is what you feel when you're in an organization, but the behaviors of the leaders, the former leaders, also help to shape the culture of the organization. And it's time for the culture to shift in most organizations. And then we have these organizational practices. You notice this doesn't say bylaws. It's how we do things. And then those shared beliefs and values and assumptions that are held, but then how do we act on them? So the culture of most workplaces, associations, even in families now, it's time to kind of shift the culture and look at our cultures from a broad perspective. So the idea of actually looking at the culture, this would be another great thing for you to look at the culture in your workplace. What is the culture? How do people operate on a day-to-day basis? Where's the power? Who are we listening to? What organizational practices are driving us? And what are the shared beliefs? And are we really acting on those values and those? And then what are the assumptions that may be holding us back? But also, what are the assumptions that we may have that would help us to move forward? Let's keep moving. This idea of cultural competence. This is really important. It may not be a term that you're as familiar with, but organizations and workplaces, we really have to define our values and our principles, and we have to demonstrate those behaviors, attitudes, policies that enable us to work cross-culturally. And it does go to our policies, our structures, our day-to-day practice. This is the same thing, our behaviors and our attitudes. And the only way we can do this is for each of us and all of us is to expand in our cultural competence. When I grew up in Memphis, and again, I'm an older person, there were a lot of people, Black people, but I think we were Negroes at that time, who had never really much come in contact with white people. And there were many white people who had never come in contact with Black people. And I don't think I knew anybody who was Hispanic. I'm not even sure if I'd ever met anybody who was Hispanic. And so the idea of we're all growing our culture, we all need to be growing our cultural competence. You say, well, why? I'm not making the moral case, I'm making the business case. We can make the moral case for this because it's the right thing to do, but there is definitely a business case and an organizational mission case to be made for each one of us and all of us to try to expand our cultural competence. And again, you're never there. We just keep learning. I've been learning about Diwali and some of the different religions, and I'll tell you my own story a little bit later about something that I just learned last Thursday. So organizationally and individually, we need to keep learning and growing. So how is your organization or how is your firm, how are you growing your cultural competence? The first thing you got to do is examine your culture, and then how do we grow and what do we do? You say, well, we can't stop all we're doing and do this. No, I know that. You got work to do. But this is also part of your work. And you just fit it in. You make it fit in, but it has to continue. It's not a one and done. It becomes. So, you could take one of these slides and talk about it for 10 minutes at a staff meeting. I'm a practical person. I'm not saying that you need to stop everything you do and totally focus on this, because that's not realistic. But I think the way you weave this through and help everybody in your firm or in your organization see how important this is to, again, your bottom line, not just your money, but to your mission and for whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. So let's go to the next one. This idea of cultural competence in organizations and in the workplace, cultural destructiveness. This is where I came into the workplace in the 70s. They told me, and you could tell people this in the 70s, maybe if I had a good lawyer, that might have helped me, but they told me, you need to do something with that hair. They said, you probably want to lose that Southern accent, because when people hear Southern accent, they take your IQ down 20 points. They said, you probably don't want to wear light colors or prints because it'll make you not seem like a professional. You probably don't want to act too girly. You probably don't want to act too Black. This was also that I would be successful in this company. And you probably don't want to put pictures of your family up because they'll think, you're just like a mom person. So they were forcing me. I was like, who am I supposed to be? And I didn't really think about it. I kept thinking. And so I spent a lot of time trying to assimilate, trying to be somebody that I wasn't in order to, quote unquote, be successful in that place. And they've done studies about what assimilation and what microaggressions do to people over time. It equals trauma. And so this idea, and that the rights and privileges were for the dominant groups only, that it's just cultural destructiveness. Then there's a place called cultural incapacity, where we just maintain the stereotypes. We have unfair practices. We know it. We're racist. We say we're not. We're not racist because we got Black friends, or something like that, or we got one Black person on our staff, versus this idea of moving toward being anti-racist. That means we got to do something about it. But there are groups and there are firms and there are organizations that are really at cultural incapacity. We went through this cultural blindness stage. We're going to treat everybody the same, but we're still only going to meet the needs of the dominant group. We're going to pretend that there's no difference in everybody, but all the structures are still designed for the dominant group. And the dominant group is the group that really sets up the structures and sets up the way the organization or the firm is set. Then this is where I think most of us are now, is cultural pre-competence, exploring cultural issues and being committed to assessing the needs of organizations, workplace, and individuals. And you wouldn't have the council if you weren't interested in exploring these cultural issues. You wouldn't be committed to trying to diversify the legal community in Sarasota if you weren't at this point. And then you move further into, and you may be here. Again, this is not static. This idea of, cultural competence, recognizing individuals and cultural differences, seeking advice from diverse groups. We don't know everything. And developing culturally unbiased leadership, staff, board, volunteers, and structures. We may have a membership onboarding that may be very cultural destructive, but we may have with the council, they may be at the cultural competence level. So this is not whole cloth. And this has just been added in the last 5 years, is cultural proficiency, implementing the changes. We recognize it, but what are we gonna do about it? Are we really gonna implement changes to improve the workplace or to improve the profession or to improve the association based on the cultural needs of our customers, our primary customers, as well as our supporting customers? So this is an interesting continuum to explore. Let's go to the next one. You gotta do something. We can say, I believe that we can, I believe that we can do this. I have the desire to do this. And, we have good intentions, but we have to move to actions. We really do have to move to action. And again, you have the council. So you don't have to set up a new structure, but it's just the idea of continuing to move to action, and what actions are you going to move to, and then prioritizing your actions, and then why are you moving there, and what is the benefit of it? And the benefit has to be for the stakeholders, for the organization, for the institution, and for you all, for the legal profession. So it's not enough just to believe these things, have the desire to make the change, and we have the intention to do it, but really continue to move to action. Let's go on. This is, when we look at talking about your association now, or your firm, or your workplace, this idea of there are multiple identities represented in an organization or workplace. We're diverse. Even if it's an all-women firm, all women are not alike. Women are different. And then when we look at inclusion, the thoughts, the ideas and perspectives that everybody matters versus just how many do we have? Oh, I used to hear that in the 70s. People, well, how many do you have? How many do they have? We couldn't find any. And I would think to myself, where are you looking? And who are you talking about? They would say that. You could hear those conversations. And then we thought equality would work, but we realized that it wasn't. It's equity. And we'll talk a little. Equity is constantly recognizing and redistributing power, because one size does not fit all. And the key is that everybody belongs. You say, well, we're talking about business here. We don't care if everybody belongs. The only way people can do their best work and to work at optimal capacity is that they belong. That they're not spending all their time trying to assimilate, looking over their shoulder, watching for the next microaggression that's going to come at them, trying to fit into a system that did not include them. So the idea that they really belong, that the organization or that the workplace engages the full potential of everybody, where innovation thrives and views and beliefs are valued. Everybody. I don't care if I just got here, that I have as much value as somebody else. You say, well, wait a minute. How can a brand new lawyer have as much value as a partner? It's the ideas that have the value, because who knows what idea that new lawyer may bring to this firm. And we talked about this idea of cultural assimilation results in disengagement and low retention. And that's the difference in boomers and Xers and Ys. As boomers, many of us went into professions and went into workplaces that really weren't designed for us. And we had to try to assimilate, but we did not come out. We said, we were the first group to go in and we needed to hang in there. And let me be honest, we were also grateful, if you will, that we were able to go through doors that people before us had never been able to go through. And often we stayed in very toxic situations, and we stayed in places that were not welcoming. And we tried very hard to assimilate. And I think it did a lot of damage to a lot of people. Xers and Ys, I'm not mad at you. You are wanting to work in places and be parts of groups that actually represent your values. And that's when you talk about hiring, when you talk about bringing new people in, people are now interviewing you as well as you interviewing them, saying, what is this firm value? What is this association value? How does this play out? They're asking. So I think that this is where I'm really proud of our X's and Y's, and pretty soon you will have some Z's. Z's were born 1995 to 96. So we now have a 5 generation, when you talk about the World War II folks, some of you in your firms, you have 5 generations or close to 5 generations of people. And it is very, very challenging to make sure that everybody belongs and that the power is distributed and that we value everybody. I didn't say this was going to be easy. So let's keep going. This idea of, we talk about diversity now, but we know everybody's different. Like I said, if you got, I've turned into one of those people who screams at the television. So when they come up with some type of, what do you have it, like the women say, and I'm like, they didn't ask me which women. Who did they talk to? They didn't ask me. That's not what I think. So let's not, all the women or all the women lawyers or all the Black people or all the people from Sarasota. We don't think the same. We're all different, and that's okay. And that we recognize that individuals affiliate with multiple identities. That's the piece of intersectionality that comes in. And also the regionalism comes in there too. I've worked in Florida and I know how different people say, oh, they're from the East Coast or they're from the Panhandle. They act like you're not, like for me, it's like all Florida. But I don't have that regionalism that you all have. I have it in Tennessee. When people talk about Knoxville versus Memphis, East Tennessee versus West Tennessee and versus Middle Tennessee. So this whole idea of diversity. And often we do talk about race, ethnicity, gender, but we really need to, age, national origin, religion or non-religion, abilities, orientation, socioeconomic status, education, marital status, language, and even physical appearance. It's interesting about marital status or non-marital status. I'm a divorced person, and I always resent going to the doctor when they ask, are you divorced? And I'm like, what does that mean? You got to check a box, It's like, well, why am I checking the box? I'm sure that a lawyer told them that they had to do that. So I'm not mad at you, but the idea that I have to check the box, like, well, if I get sick, don't call him. I'm not mad at him. We're kind of friends now, but there's no reason to call him. So I just always check single. But I mean, it's just the whole idea of how we parcel people out, and whatever we think about the diversity of people, it can definitely sway how we treat people, how we include them, how we make decisions. So we are all different, and it's okay. Let's keep going. This idea of equity is what we were talking about. That equitable treatment acknowledges my diversity and it celebrates my difference, and it helps to eliminate the barriers that prevent the full participation of everybody. So the idea of one size does not fit all. So you don't have to, well, all the lawyers or all the women lawyers, it's very different. And equity is something that again, none of this is easy, but making sure that we have opportunities for that. I like that we're getting things in the chat, and we're going to get to that. Let's keep going. And then inclusion. Diversity is the mix. Inclusion is getting it to work together. How does it work well together? And this is when we start thinking about our unconscious or implicit bias. And organizations have biases too, not just individuals. And it can be unconscious and it can be implicit. And the idea of how do we make sure that we create an environment where everybody can feel welcome, respected, supported, and valued to fully participate. And it embraces my differences, that I don't have to turn into one of you in order to, quote unquote, be successful in your firm or in this association. So the inclusion the inclusion and equity are the parts that most folks are working on right now really hard. Let's keep moving. This is just a different way of taking a look at this. If you look at exclusion, my parents were both born in the 20s. My mom was born in 1926. My dad was born in 1928. So when they came into the world, as I think then they were colored people, they were outside of everything because of their race. So everything was happening inside, and all the green dots were moving, the world was moving, and they were on the outside around, and there was no way that they could get in. And there was just this whole world going on, and they were all around the sides, and people who looked like them, and there were probably a lot of other people out there. Then I came into the world in the 50s, and the world was segregated. And you said, well, what's the difference in exclusion and segregated? I'm not sure if the people, if the green dots were even aware in exclusion that the red, the yellow, and the blue dots were even out there, versus a segregated society where things were set up often by the people who had been excluded. So I went to a segregated school in, here in Memphis. Don't feel sorry for me. I had a great education. I had teachers who told me that I could be more than the world was telling me that I could be. They were telling us that we could be lawyers. They were telling us that we could go to college. They were telling us things that the world was not telling us, but you had all these organizations and systems that were being created on the outside to make sure that people who were different actually had a world or had a universe to function in. And at that time, most of the conversation in the 60s was about integration. That if we could just get in, that if people who were different could just get in to the primary universe, and that everybody in all the green dots could see us for who we were, that would take care of it. And we know that it didn't. What we need is inclusion, where I can still be my red dot, I can still be my southern curly haired old Black woman dot, and I can still function in the universe, whether it's the legal community or whatever it is. So this idea of inclusion means with, not just in, because you can get into something and still not belong, and still not feel like you belong, and still none of the systems will change in order for you to be included. So I just thought this was an interesting graphic to share, and it kind of, mirrors the way, especially going from my parents' life all the way through, through my life, and then people beyond me. Let's move. This idea of inclusion is not a strategy to help people fit in. That's assimilation, that I got to fit into these existing systems and structures, but it's about transforming the systems and structures to work for all people. You have translators now. Years ago, I would doubt even in Florida and even in Texas that there were translators who spoke not only Spanish, but many other languages in the court systems. I don't know how long ago you all did that, but I bet that hasn't always been. And so we're transforming systems and structures to work for all people. And it really creates a better legal community and a better world for everybody. So it's not about trying to wedge folks into systems that already exist. It's how do we look at and revisit and rethink these structures, not because they are bad, not because anybody messed up. Because when we revisit our systems, we don't need to do it with the blame game. We need to do it with the how do we move forward. Let's go to the next one. And then access. You can be inside of a system and still have no access. I was inside of my school. I'm left-handed. So I have those of you who are right-handed, you have right-handed privilege. So I didn't have access to certain things when I was in school because there were no left-handed scissors. I don't think I had a left-handed desk except for 1 year. So my arm was just hanging. The teachers did not know how to teach me how to, at that time, how to write, because they were teaching circles going this way and my circles would have been going that way. So I didn't have access. There was just nothing there. Giving equitable access to everyone. What is it that I need to be able to get into this system and then fit into and how does this system work to fit for me? So there were a lot of things that I could I still can't sew because at that time, the sewing machine arms didn't swing. And at that time they were saying, again, talk about stereotyping, all girls needed to take home economics and all boys needed to take shop. And I was failing miserably at home economics because everybody else's material was going through the sewing machine, mine was coming out. And my pattern looked like a rat had eaten around the dress that I was supposed to cut out because there were no left-handed scissors. And my mom, who was fierce, and she was a school secretary, not at my school in high school. And my teacher was not about to make any accommodation. She kept saying, "You're gonna fail this class." And she would hold up my little cutout dress and say, "This looks like a rat ate around." I can still hear it. Yeah, I probably got PTSD from that. She kept saying, "You're gonna fail this class." And I kept saying, "I'm doing the best I can." So I came home, of course, I'm crying, all that. My mom's like, "What's wrong with you?" My mom didn't tolerate it. She said, "What's wrong with you?" And I said, I can't make it work." She goes over to the school and they say, "Well, all the girls have to take home economics." So she and her friends got busy. I guess my mom should have been a lawyer. They started scouring through all the rules of, at that time, the Shelby County schools to see if there were, Memphis City schools, to see if there was anything written that said all the girls had to take home ec. She couldn't find anything. It was cultural. So she goes back over to my high school and she tells the principal that she wants me out of home economics. And he says to her, "Oh, that's not possible. All the girls have to take home economics." And she said, "Show me. Show me." And she had made all these copies and all this stuff. And it wasn't a law. It wasn't a rule. So I still can't sew. I still can't sew hymns or anything like that. But she had me pulled out and I was put in speech and debate because I didn't have no access. I had no access. So I'm using personal examples, but I think you can think of professional examples where there is no access. Let's go to the next one. This is the deadly triangle. It is the unholy, deadly triangle that destroys organizations, it destroys professions, it destroys associations, and to be honest, it destroys people. It destroys people. So when we play into our stereotypes, which come out of our implicit bias, then we commit microaggressions against people, and they all just keep going around and around. We're not going to get to talk a lot about microaggressions. In fact, they don't even call them microaggressions anymore. And if anybody's interested, they call them subtle acts of exclusion. And I'll put the book, we can put the book in the chat that talks about subtle acts of exclusion. And there's a lot about the workplace microaggressions, but that's what causes us. Our stereotypes, which play into our biases, and then we say things and do things that actually are acts of exclusion against people who are different or toward people who are different. So this is the deadly triangle. So you might look and say, in an organization, or in our company, our firm, what are the stereotypes? What are stereotypes about partners? What are stereotypes about the legal profession? And then how does implicit bias play into that? And then are we really aware of all of the microaggressions that are happening in our workplace, in our firm? And at many times about microaggressions, most of us, all of us, you've been the target. All of us have totally committed microaggressions against other people. We've been bystanders where we saw it or we heard it. And hopefully many of us have become allies where we speak up. So we've all played different roles. I hope to come back and talk about microaggressions. I can show you a video where everybody at this table is committing microaggressions against everybody else. So we've all done it. And it's about think about your thinking when we're thinking about bias and stereotypes. And we have to work on this because we were all socialized in different ways. And we were all raised in different ways. And we've all had different experiences in our lives. And so each of us has to work on this. This is not merely something that white people need to work on. We all have to work on this. And we have to work on it all the time. Let's go to the next one. Yeah, we all got them. We just need to own it. If you've ever read anything by Ken Blanchard or been in one of his seminars, a lot of it has to do with ego. And when you're in a Ken Blanchard seminar, he has you stand up and say, "Hi, my name is," and you go like, "Hi, my name is Vicki Clark, and I'm an egomaniac." And we all say that, and then he says, "Okay, now we're going to work on it." And we start working on concepts around servant leadership and things like that. But a lot of our biases and a lot of our stereotypes play into our own egos. So let's go to the next one. This idea of this unconscious bias, it's just our brain making quick judgments and decisions. And we're going to talk about system 1 and system 2, and it's influenced by what we've seen. It's influenced by what we've heard. It's influenced by the way we were raised and our personal experiences. People are now struggling with this because they're saying, "But I was raised one way. I know now that things are different." am I not honoring my family? It has nothing to do with you honoring your family. Again, when we know more and we know better, we do better. But we all have unconscious bias, and it's triggered. We see somebody, we immediately think it. We were hardwired for that. For this, it's called System 1 thinking. Let's keep going. So again, if you have nothing to do but study all of this, System 1 thinking is that fast, instinctual, emotional, it's unconscious, and it's automatic. System 2 thinking is slower, deliberate, logical, conscious, effortful. System 1 thinking is what keeps you from walking out in front of a car. We have to have System 1 thinking. In cave days, System 1 thinking said that anything that was different than you was going to destroy you. And that's what some people call a lizard brain. And that's kind of the way our brains were designed. System 2 thinking is higher level thinking. And we really have to force ourselves to do that System 2 thinking. So it means slow up, think about your thinking. So, and there's a little test you can take around this. I don't know how many of you have ever taken the Harvard implicit bias test. Those are fascinating to take. Not to say that you're a bad person or you're a good person, but it just helps you to get into this System 1 and System 2 thinking. And I usually like to have people take a couple of those and we can reflect on them. But let's go to the next one. So you're saying, wait a minute. So when I'm stressed, when I'm under a time crunch, when I'm distracted, when I'm missing information, when I'm multitasking, when I got new situations, that's my life. All of you are saying that this is your life. And guess what? All of that is what drives us into System 1 thinking. And so that's why we have to try to slow down. And specifically when we're distracted or when we're stressed, our System 1 thinking kicks right in. If we see somebody who looks a certain way or somebody says something, that thing, and we automatically make a decision about it. What happens in the workplace is, or in professions is, when we act on it. When I don't give you an assignment because you don't look like somebody that I can really trust to do this. It has nothing to do with whether or not you can really do it. But my go-to people are the people who kind of look like me. They're the people who think like me. I was working with a group yesterday and they were talking about diversity of thought. And this one woman said, you know, I realized, is a pharmaceutical company, and she said, I realized that the way I problem solve and that I usually give the best assignments to the people who problem solve like I do. And I'm so aware of that now. And they actually took some of the Harvard implicit bias tests. And she says, I realize now that those are my go-to people for some of the better assignments because they problem solve in the same way I do versus some of the other people who are just as capable in my department, but they don't problem solve in the same process. And I was like, ooh, we got a breakthrough here because she was talking about diversity of thought. So this System 1 thinking, we need it because it keeps us alive. But in the workplace, we really have to rise to that System 2 level because this is where all the biases show itself. Let's go to the next one. We all stereotype people. Again, we were hardwired. It was built in, that fight or flight response to try to keep us alive. Right now, psychologists are saying that with COVID, that internally our bodies know that we are in a fight or flight response. Even though you say, I don't spend all my time thinking about COVID, but the idea is that internally our bodies are preparing itself to try to take care of us, our minds and our bodies. That's why we can't focus. That's why we're making crazy decisions, some of us. That's why some people are sleeping a lot, eating a lot, whatever is going on, that fight or flight response. So we are now more inclined to have our unconscious bias play out because of all the stress that we're all under for various reasons. So let's keep going. We like people who sound like us. We like people who look like us. We like people who have similar hobbies to us. You know, people, do you golf? Yes, I golf. Oh, wow. Would you like to go golfing with me? You don't know whether I'm a serial killer or not, just because I golf. You know, you have no idea, but we have golfing in common. And so you automatically attach to me because we have preferences toward people. We like people who are physically fit and who are well prepared. And we love, especially in Florida, you love people from the same college. Oh my gosh, the whole different with the universities down there. When I have been working in Gainesville and Ocala, it's amazing. We like people who are from the same city. We'll ask people from New York if they know other people from New York, as big as New York is. And we do like people who are the same sex, race, religious conviction, and nationality. There's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with that. But we do have to, as again, professionals, we have to try to overcome these unconscious biases, because when these preferences play out in the workplace, we got problems. Or in school, or in any place like that, we got problems when we act on that. And when we let our stereotypes and our unconscious bias drive us to action or to inaction. Because sometimes it's almost passive aggressive. There are things we don't do because people don't look like us, or they don't have the same background that we have, or you know, she didn't finish college. You know, maybe she's shown in her workplace that she can do amazing work, but you know what? She doesn't have a degree. Those types of things. Let's keep going. And this is just who we, you know, it's hard. It's difficult for us to identify with people who are different. But I'm a work in progress. I realize that I have as much to learn from a Generation Z woman as she has to learn from me. And I have to be open to valuing her no matter her age, and that I know that I don't know everything just because I've been on the planet longer than she has. And so this idea of, you know, who we have bias against, and then we can each make our own list of the unconscious bias that we have, because we all got our own list. Let's keep going, if we're honest. So we all got them. We need to identify what they are. We need to dissect them. Where did it come from? Why is it like that? And then which ones are we going to address? Kind of look for common interest groups, you know, people that you can talk to about. And then you get rid of it, and then guess what? It'll kick back. Let's talk about the whole age thing. Again, I'm having to work on that, because little jokes and things that I think would be funny about young people, it's not funny when someone is trying to establish themselves in their profession. And I was thinking the other day, I was on a call with a very young woman who was an AmeriCorps member in a nonprofit organization. She's dedicating a year of her life to her community, working at a stipend. And she was talking about how she made this decision, and we were talking about why there was such a lack of diversity in the AmeriCorps programs now, because so many young people are coming out of college with a lot of debt. And AmeriCorps is just like stateside Peace Corps, and very few people can afford to do that right now. And she started talking about how she had been working, this was something she wanted to do, and she planned it, and she had planned it with her husband. My System 1 brain kicked in, and I wanted to say out loud, your husband, you're 12. What are you talking about? And since I'm a work in progress, I said to myself, don't say it, don't say it, don't say it. Because that would have been very marginalizing to her. Whereas I would have thought it was a joke, because I'm an older person. Here she is trying to establish herself in this organization. That would not have been, that was my bias kicking in. And I was making a joke, which actually meant that I was committing a microaggression against her. And then I used it as an example. So if I got a bias against young people in the workplace, as soon as I'm working on it, I'm doing it, I'm seeing everybody's value. As soon as a young person makes a mistake, does something wrong, or leaves the organization, I go, see, they're not loyal. See, they're not loyal. So that's that bias kickback. Same thing about older people. You know, first time an older person messes up with something with technology, that kicks right back in. So we have to be willing to experience discomfort. I was very uncomfortable because I was working it. My brain was going, should I say this? No, don't say that. You know better than to say that, you know. And then being willing to experience discomfort. And then again, you got to read, you got to study. And we'll look at Ed, we'll talk about your question as we go through. So this idea of working on it, and again, we got to work on these all the time. I found myself being uncomfortable sitting on a parking lot one night here in Memphis, not recently, when a young African-American man in a hoodie, he walked across the parking lot. Now I have 2 sons, adult sons, and I have a 15-year-old grandson. And I know that if anybody felt that way about my sons and my grandsons, I would go crazy. So I sat there having this internal battle with myself about what was making me feel uncomfortable, why, you know, all that. It's because of all of the messages that you get, we all get, about older people and young people, specifically young men of color. And so, I mean, I'm telling you these things. I'm not proud of it, but I'm telling you that I struggle with these things also. Let's go. We're going to have some good questions in the chat. Let's keep moving. This idea of racism, it is everywhere, and we just need to own it. And we're talking mostly about system racism because it's just built in, because the systems weren't designed for multiple races. And it really is that people believe that folks have different traits or different abilities, and there's a superiority of one race over another. And that's what leads into the prejudice, the discrimination, and the antagonism, and and the horrible things that happen in our society. And then there are still people who believe there are the biological differences between people. And then when they take the form of social actions, and then the systems, and all of that. And it was difficult for me. You may say, well, why was it hard for you to start talking about racism? Because it's a hard conversation to have. That it's easier to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, but it's harder to start talking about racism because it has a harder edge and people take it more personally. But I think we're at a point now where we have to talk about it, and we have to talk about all the isms, not just racism. There are lots of isms, and we need to work on all the isms. Let's go to the next one. So there are many levels, but we're just gonna talk about these 4 levels. The internalized, that's within me. It's my private beliefs, my private biases, your private beliefs, and how has this influenced by our culture? And so I have these negative beliefs about people, and again, I have internalized privilege, or people have internalized privilege about superiority or entitlement. That's that internalized racism within individuals. There's another level of racism, the next level. And again, we're giving these very short trips because we've only got a couple of hours. Let's go back. I know a couple of hours is much time for you all. Let's go to the next level. It's interpersonal racism. This is where the way I interact with people based on my personal racial beliefs, and it affects the way I interact with people. And we're seeing this a lot more now in stores and in places where people interact with people, and we treat people differently. There was a 30-year-old young man who told a story about when he was 10 years old, right here in Memphis, Tennessee. He's only 30, sitting on a bench outside of a Walmart. He was with his grandfather and waiting for his grandmother to come out of Walmart. He's 30. You know, it's hard for me to believe that it's not hard for me to believe it still happens, but it saddens me. And a white man said hello, and they said hello because it's Memphis and we all speak to each other. And the guy says, "It's a nice looking boy you got there." And he said his grandfather said, "Yes, this is my grandson." And the man said, "How much will you take for him?" This was 20 years ago. And when he tells the story, he was 10, he didn't understand it. And he said his grandfather said, you know, "He's not for sale, and neither is anybody that I know. We don't buy and sell people." And they got up and went to wait in a car. And his grandfather explained to him what that meant. And that stuck with him. And the idea that it's that interpersonal racism, and that man may have been trying to make a joke, but it's not funny. That's why you have to understand context. You have to understand context. You have to understand historical context. There is a story about a young Latina who was born in this country, who says that she had a teacher that every time they said the Pledge of Allegiance when she was in the 1st grade, the teacher told her to go stand outside because she wasn't a true American. And she's just 40 years old. So this is that interpersonal racism that plays out in the workplace and in schools, and this is between individuals, and it affects our public interactions. Let's go to the next one. Then there's institutional racism. When we start talking about the unfair policies and practices of schools and workplaces and institutions, where it is very difficult to have equitable outcomes for people of color. And there, to be honest, there are advantages for white people only because the people set up the systems. Nobody who's in the system now set it up, but it was set up for a certain group of people. And then the idea about power. And then those power systems can tend to reinforce the racial inequities. And this is this institutional racism that happens within companies and within systems. We'll keep going. And then this idea of structural racism, racial bias against institutions and among institutions and across society. This is this cumulative effect. This is why so many people of color are so worn down, because it's like you struggle with it every day, everywhere you go. And because a lot of people, some of us don't even understand our own history, but that others don't understand the history, the culture, the ideology, and the interactions of why these policies and why these systems don't work and why they feel oppressive and why they are at a disadvantage. No, again, most of us didn't set up any of these systems, but we have to begin to understand how that it is important to actually question and to revisit these structural systems. So these are just 4 of the levels. There's a lot more, but this is that cumulative and compounding effects. And let's keep going. Well, it's at every level of society. It really is. It's everywhere. But I hope everybody's working on it. So when we look at systemic racism in wealth, in employment, in housing, in criminal justice, in healthcare, in education, and surveillance, the legal profession touches all of these. You all, in some way, there are laws about all this stuff. And so in many ways, you are dealing with systemic racism every day, because there are laws that impact, wealth and banks and who gets employed and who doesn't, and housing and who can get a loan and who doesn't. And obviously the criminal justice system and inequities in healthcare, and now all this about surveillance, and definitely about, education. So these are 7 of the systems, just 7 that we know that are real. We'll keep going. Like I said, we could do a whole session on all of these, but we're not. This idea of privilege, it's really kind of unearned. Like I said, most of you have right-handed privilege because the world was designed for you. Standards and rules upon the dominant groups. It doesn't mean you didn't work hard. That's what's going on now. Everybody's arguing about who worked hard, and I had to work 2 jobs to go through college. That doesn't, and you got a scholarship, and that means that you have privilege and I don't have, it's not about that. It's that we're being denied something. You're getting something based on the different social categories that you belong to. And having privilege, it just gives you advantages in life, but it is not a guarantee of success. And so we really need to demystify this idea about privilege, and we need to stop being defensive about privilege. And yes, there is male privilege because the world was designed by men, pretty much for men. When you look at all of the documents, they were talking about men. They weren't even talking about women, let alone people of color. And I'm not anti-male. I've just told you, I have 2 adult sons and a grandson. I'm not anti-white male, but I do understand that the way systems are set up, they were set up by people. If I were going to change the world, everybody would be left-handed and have crazy curly hair. And so I'd have left-handed, crazy curly hair privilege. That's what I would, and there would be no steps. And that would give, and I would set it because I'm setting it up totally from my vantage point, for me, by me. And that would give me privilege. It doesn't mean I don't like the rest of you, but I'd just be setting it up so that I could be the most comfortable. But I'm kind of not concerned about you. I haven't even looked into your world. And that's what happened. That's where privilege comes from. Let's keep going. This idea of we all carry particular types of privilege. Again, in my race, I have light skin privilege. Because in most races, as we talked about, light skin, for whatever reason, is better. I don't know, it allows us to advocate. But this gives us, how do we use our privilege? How do we use our privilege? That's the whole thing, is how do we use our privilege to change situations, to change organizations, and to advocate for social justice? We don't need to let's not spend a lot of energy defending our privilege. Let's spend time using whatever privilege we have and in whatever situations that we can to change those systems and those situations. Let's keep going. We're gonna have a deep conversation. The University of San Francisco did a kind of a got privilege thing. And let's look at this to help students as well as faculty. If you don't have to think about it, it's a privilege. Somebody once said that if no law had ever had to be passed that impacted your life or changed things for you, then you have privilege, which you all know more about the laws than I do. So if you look at this, if while growing up, college was an expectation, you had class privilege. If you cannot be legally fired, are you all saying we can't legally fire people? Nobody can legally fire people because they're homosexual or gender deviant. Can't legally, but we all know it's done. We have heterosexual privilege. If you can expect time off from work to celebrate religious holidays without asking, we have Christian privilege. If you're confident that the police exist only to protect you, pretty much you have white male privilege. If you can use public bathrooms without stares or fear of anxiety, you have cisgender. And cisgender is a fairly new term, meaning that you live into the body or the sexuality that you were born in. And if you don't have to worry about how to get up Lone Mountain, and I would never make it up Lone Mountain. I got 6 steps here. I got problems back here. You have able-bodied privilege. So if you don't have to think about it, it's a privilege. I used to live in a 2-story house in Houston, and I must have gone up and down those steps a million times a day when my kids were little. I couldn't live in a 2-story house now if my life depended on it, because I don't have that privilege anymore. So let's keep going. So we all got to check our privilege. Again, not a burden. How do we use it to create this more just and inclusive world? How do we use it? It is an opportunity. It is not a burden. And we shouldn't be guilty about it. We shouldn't be defensive about it. We should see it as an opportunity so that we can do more. It is an uneven distribution of power, either within a society or an organization or even in a home or any type of, workplace. Again, there are different, I'm an only child, but I know that families tend, they like the oldest child, or the people always say that the youngest got more. This is uneven distribution of power. And this idea of personal privilege, of these unearned attributes that dictate the ease and influence that we have within society. People have said they never had to talk to their child about what they do if the police stops them. I didn't have that privilege. I had to talk to my sons about that. What they should do, what they should not do, how they need to be, yes, sir, and how they need to be careful moving their hands and all of that. There are some people who say, we had a group of young white people on last night on a conversation that I do, and they said nobody ever had to talk to them about that. So it's a fact, it's not an insult. And we have privilege in some areas, and in other areas we don't. So it's not, again, these are not all or nothing. Let's keep going. We can't be blind. We just cannot be blind to this invisible system of privilege that I'm a part of. We can't. We just gotta own it, and then work to help open up systems and open up workplaces. That's how you use our privilege. Next one. You've probably seen a version of this. We thought equality would work, so all the boys got one box. The tall boy never needed the box, and the one box didn't help the little boy. And to me, the game is the game of life. It's not a baseball game. So then you go to equity. So we took the box from the tall boy who never needed it for access. He could always see the game. The little boy needed 2 boxes, so now he can see. What's happening is when people feel like someone is taking something from them that they didn't need, they're feeling marginalized. But they didn't need it anyway. Justice is, how do I use my privilege? The reality is, guess what? Somebody gonna always have more boxes than the other. Always. That's just the way it is. And look at the little boy. Look how far back he is from the game. He has now another barrier in front of him. He can't even see the fence. And so in my idea, the tall boy took all of his boxes of privilege and knocked the fence down. And now everybody can not only see the game, but can access and actually get into this game of life. So in our organizations and in our companies and in our firms, we need to not just tell a different version, we need to change the story. And this is one way to think about how we use our privilege. Let's keep going. It's interesting how people's personas change over time. When I was in college, Angela Davis was considered a very radical person. But I love this quote. I mean, she's no longer radical, whatever that means now. She said, I'm no longer accepting the things I cannot change. I'm changing the things I cannot accept. And I think that's where I am. I think that's where a lot of people are, that we're trying to change things and we're doing them in different ways. Like I said, I don't think there are going to be a lot of iconic figures. It's going to be, how do I change things in my sphere of influence? How do you change things within your firm? How do you change things within the bar association? How do you change things that you cannot accept? And the reason you can't accept them is not necessarily because it totally impacts you, but because you know that it's not the right thing to do. And when we know more, we do better. So let's keep going. And we're going to get to the end so we get. You have people who are champions, and you've got some champions in this association. And champions are not all people of color. Champions are not all people who have been marginalized. Often you hear the word allies. Allies are people, but we all have different positions in society as well as privilege. So you're gonna have champions and allies. You have new people, people who are like, I'm thinking about this for the first time. I'm not sure about this. I wanna learn more about it. And yes, they're gonna say something. And there's a page that I have called Let's Talk About It and Do Something. And some woman had heard what's called the Negro National Anthem for the first time when it was played at the Kansas City football game a couple of weeks ago. Unfortunately, people booed, but that's a whole different conversation. But she posted on the page that she had never heard it before, and she listened to the words, and she thought it was a wonderful song, and she wanted to know where it came from. Well, some other person on the page, another white woman, jumped all over her. Like, where have you been? Under a rock. How can you not hear it? So I jumped in and said, this is not who we want to be. This page is for people to acknowledge what they haven't done or what they don't know and to learn more. So I put up the, we put up the history about it and all that. So there are people who are going to be new to thinking about this. There are folks who say, I'm going to be a bystander. I'm really not going to do anything. I can't really think about this. I'm too busy. I'm just going to kind of buy there. And then to be honest, there are going to be people who are going to say this is all a waste of time. Waste of time and a waste of money. And I'm not intending to change my mind. You have people all over this, all over this. But when we're talking about systems, we're hoping that the champions and the newbies will actually drive the revisiting. And you may be in different places at different times around different issues. Let's keep going, because we got to finish this up. We all go back. We can't help it. We're all connected. We have tried so hard. We tried segregated schools and redlining and all these different types of things that you all are much more aware of than I am. But we are all connected. We were designed uniquely and individually, but we were designed to be connected as human beings. So let's go to the last slide, and then we'll try to do some of the questions. James Baldwin's quote that said, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. So I hope you